go back into like to the military stuff. So,
Yeah.
because like I love hearing people's stories of like why did you join the military? Like what? So what was the what was the thing for you that made you want to join the military?
Yeah. So when I was in undergrad, I was getting ready to start, actually, I guess before undergrad, I was getting ready to start my freshman year at UC Davis. And I got a recruiting letter in the mail from the ROTC program. And I kind of like made a joke to my parents. I was like, oh, I could join the army. They'll pay for my school.
Yeah.
And my mom, she's, oh, good joke. But then my dad, he was like, well, like you could, like, it's something to consider, like seriously consider. And so him and I ended up having a long conversation about it. And I'm very, very similar to my dad in a lot of ways. And he told me that one of his biggest regrets was not finding some way when he was younger to serve his country, whether it was through the military or something else.
Hmm.
And I felt like I would have the same regret if I didn't at least try it. So I was very nervous. I was like, oh, the army is a bunch of insanely fit people. They're like superheroes.
Yeah.
My dad's sitting there going, no, they're normal
No,
people.
they're average people. So
Anybody can join the military. And I was like, okay, maybe you're right. So I joined the ROTC program at UC Davis. You were allowed to take the classes without actually like joining the program and being in the uniform.
hmm
So I took the classes my first quarter of college. I liked them, so I joined the program, and then I started wearing the uniform, going to the lab exercises, all that kind of stuff. Um, Still hadn't committed anything to the army, but I decided that I actually really liked it. And at the end of my freshman year, I applied for a scholarship. I received a 3-year scholarship, so they paid for my last 3 years of college. And
nice.
in order to accept that scholarship, I had to sign my contract.
Hmm.
So I signed my contract in October of 2010, and just got my discharge paperwork about 2 weeks ago.
Oh, okay. Okay. Very
So
cool. Yeah.
yeah.
So, what were you going in the army for?
So my original plan, when I was in undergrad, I was pre-med. My major was neurobiology, physiology, and behavior, and switched to that from biochem because I didn't want to take physical chemistry.
Hmm.
I took organic chemistry and said I don't want
Oh,
any more of
jeez.
this.
Yeah, that's awful. I've heard that's awful.
uh, Organic chemistry gave me a quarter life crisis in undergrad. So,
Hmm.
but when I was in undergrad, I thought I was going to go to med school and be a doctor. That was what I had wanted to do for my entire childhood. And so I was like, oh, I'm going to be a neurosurgeon for the Army. So when I commissioned, I basically got to choose my branch because I went into the National Guard instead of active duty.
Yeah.
Commissioning into active duty, there's an accessions process, and you have to like be matched with your branch, and it's needs of the Army. But because I was going into the National Guard, all I had to do was find a unit that had an opening with the AOC that I wanted and get a letter of acceptance, and I got that for medical service. So my plan was I'll go into the medical service corps. It'll give me an opportunity to see the medical side of the Army. I'll go to medical school, and then once I finish medical school, I'll transfer over to the medical corps and be an Army doctor.
Hmm.
But then after undergrad, I did not apply to med school while I was in undergrad. I already knew that I was going to take at least a year off, just because the application process alone
It's crazy, crazy.
is like a full-time job.
Yeah, yeah, yep, absolutely.
um, so I had emailed one of my professors at the end of my senior year, and I asked if she would write me a letter of recommendation for my medical school application. And she was like, yeah, absolutely. By the way, are you interested in working in my lab as a lab technician? Um, And I was like, yeah, I don't know anything about research. I've never worked in a lab before, but sure.
Yeah.
So I started working in her lab at UC Davis. It was a neuroscience lab. Got my first introduction to research and really enjoyed it. So throughout the first year I was working for her, I took the MCAT. I applied to med school. Didn't get into med school, but throughout that process, I was like, I don't think I actually want to go to med school.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when I decided to apply to grad school. But on the Army side, I was kind of just like stuck in medical service at that point, and I was like, well, crap, this isn't exactly what I thought it was going to be. um, so I started looking into other options, and I actually, by the time I went to captain's career course, I went for combined logistics, and my plan was to pick up a secondary AOC. So my primary AOC was medical service, and I wanted to pick up logistics as my secondary.
Mm-hmm.
And I did the logistics captain's career course, but I ended up not ever getting into a logistics position to be able to submit the paperwork to pick up the AOC. And then I ended up getting out. So spent the majority, I guess, all of my Army career in medical service unexpectedly.
Yeah, it happens. It happens. But do you so I don't know. I mean, this might be for the Army too, but do you think that medical gets away with like a lot more stuff compared to the other divisions?
Yes.
Okay, all right. Okay, okay. Because I got away with murder, like literally murder. It was hilarious. So, yeah.
It's funny because it's like a double-edged sword. Like, I loved that we kind of had free reign to like do whatever we needed to do, and everybody was kind of just like, oh, we're just not going to touch them because they're medical and we don't understand what they do.
Mm-hmm.
So that was nice, but then at the same time it's like, well, like I want to be involved in like the planning process and the operations process, and everybody's just like, oh, you're medical, go do your own medical thing, we'll figure the rest out. Like, no, I want to do that stuff.
Yeah, and we could do like so much more stuff than compared to the civilian world. Like for me, I got my like medical tech like certification through the Air Force, and then I come out and all I have is an EMT basic
Oh my God.
certification where I could suture people, I could intubate people, I can do a lot more stuff than like what the normal like EMT could do. Even like dealing with patients, like military members that are patients, it's just like, God, you're such a wuss. Like, suck it up, man. Like goodness. And like I had to do so many STD checks that was just hilarious.
Gosh, that's funny.
And,
Yeah,
and
I was medical service, and that's like the one part of the medical world in the Army that has zero actual medical capabilities. Like
yeah.
I didn't do. I was like I was the platoon leader for the medics, and
Mm,
so I did logistics, and I made PowerPoints, and I sat in meetings with the commander and all that kind of stuff, but nothing actual medical. But during my deployment, my medics taught me how to give an IV, and I got to give my
nice.
commander an IV.
Nice. I used to be the guinea pig for new trainees, like people coming in for IVs, because like literally my arms are like Google Maps. Like seriously, like it's called nurse porn. Like they literally look at my veins and they're like, oh my God, these are amazing. And it's just like I don't even need a tourniquet to do an IV. And like what I would do is I would lay in bed and they're like, okay, you have to get an IV on this guy. And I would start screaming and get him so like anxious and fired up that like they would fuck up, part of my French. And like literally I had one guy, he literally took a needle, like this is my arm here. He literally went straight down in my arm instead of like doing like an angle like this. And I'm yelling at him like, "What the fuck are you doing? Like, what is wrong with you?" And so yeah, it was. I think I got like 7 IVs in like one day just to get
Oh
tested
my
on.
gosh.
It was like whatever, but yeah, it's the craziest stuff. Like